Greener Media's Mining Weekly is speaking to Fortune Mojapelo, the CEO of Bushveld Minerals. Fortune, how can South Africa Incorporated bring more and bring the best out of its vanadium resources?
Vanadium is a fantastic resource. South Africa is certainly the largest when it comes to high-grade primary vanadium resource base in the world. It has 3 of 4 operating primary vanadium processing plants in the world. And there's a reason why those 3 are in South Africa. It's just because South Africa has got both the scale and the high grade that you need to build these primary processing facilities. I don't know if you know this, Martin, but South Africa at some point used to supply almost a quarter of the world's vanadium requirements. And that came off significantly when Highveld stopped, because Highveld alone accounted for quite a lot of vanadium supply globally. Today, all the vanadium production out of South Africa is basically from Bushveld and Glencore. And we think South Africa needs to go back to that 25+% share of the global vanadium market. And we think that we've got the resource base, and there's a fantastic market opportunity to certainly do that.
Highveld Steel traditionally did a lot of marketing of vanadium. Do you think we can do extra effort on the marketing front?
If you look at a number of these battery metals we talk about, the fantastic thing about them is that their underlying existing demand is currently underwritten by, very old traditional applications, right? And that's quite important, because if you're going to develop the supply into the oncoming energy transition space, into the battery space, you need something that underwrites that capital investment that you need to make to build up that supply capacity. So if you look at vanadium, for example, 90% of the world's vanadium is still used as a strengthening agent, alloying element for steel, in respect of which the demand is still very strong. Even if you take a flat steel production outlook, the intensity of use of vanadium in steel is actually very good. And interestingly, when we look at the whole decarbonization agenda, right, steel that has vanadium contributes towards that, because you need much less tons of steel. So therefore, you need to produce less, right, for the same strength impact. And there's some studies that have actually been done that demonstrate the savings that you generate from a carbon dioxide emissions perspective by using microalloyed steels. So that underpin of demand is important. We can say the same thing about manganese, which is used as an alloying element in steel. We can say the same about nickel. And the point is that over and above this anchor, you've got this exciting game changer demand growth coming from the energy storage space. And I think that we're just fortunate here in South Africa that we have most of these commodities where we are positioned as among the largest reserves in terms of ranking, with some of the highest grades are in the world. I mean, certainly if you talk about manganese, you talk about vanadium, you talk about PGMs, we talk about nickel. These are all elements that have, or copper, that have a big role to play in the energy transition going forward. We are producing them, we are supplying them into traditional markets, on the basis of which we can scale up our production capacity on a brownfield basis as we start to feed more and more into this energy transition space. So it couldn't have been scripted better for South Africa. And from a metals perspective, the question for me is not how much do we supply of these metals, it is how much of the value chain are we going to claim? Because we certainly have a lot of the key enablers for us to capture a lot more of the value chain than we're currently realizing. And I think that we have, of course, to identify what are the policy enablers, what are the various pieces that we need to pull together to ensure that we do this, right? So when I talk about the enablers that we have already, we've got the large resource base by far in terms of high-grade resource base. We have primary processing infrastructure, which oftentimes is a bottleneck and is a barrier to entry. If you look at, for example, the base metals refineries, you're talking billions of dollars in investments to build those things. We've got those things here. Like if you look at in the vanadium space, our processing facilities, to replicate that, you're going to need in excess of $600 million to do that. We've got the primary processing infrastructure in place. And then the third thing that we do have, and this is the interesting thing about the battery space, is that the downstream capital investments we need to make are not massive. The capital intensity is not large by any stretch. We're building an electrolyte manufacturing plant for VRFBs, which is going to be the largest out of China when it comes into production. The capital investment for that plant, which is going to use about 1,100 tons of vanadium per year, is sub $25 million, right? I know a nickel sulfate plant that is being built at the Sibanye's base metals refinery. Also, we're talking tens of millions of dollars, but is supplying battery-grade nickel sulfate into the global market. The name is Takadu, right? So the capital intensity beyond the primary processing infrastructure is not very high, so it is very much affordable. We've got the third thing, which is the technical expertise. The beauty in the globalized world today is that IP and technical expertise is very mobile. We can access the best of the best from around the world. But we here in South Africa have a lot of IP when it comes to the metallurgical processing of materials. And by the way, even when we talk about the battery metal space, South Africa has a long history, right? We talk about the Zebra battery. You can trace its origins back to the CSIR, for example. We talk even about vanadium redox flow batteries. You see that South Africa has got a long history of involvement with these technologies. But the fourth and most important enabler of all is that we have today the market. If you look at what the IRP, the Integrated Resource Plan that has been put forward by the government, by the Department of Mineral Resources and Energy, it makes some very bold ambitions around renewable energy, right? It makes some fairly bold statements around transitioning away from fossil fuels. We talk about using, for example, old decommissioned coal power plants to actually put solar generation and battery storage there because of the connections that are already there with the grid. We talk about the risk mitigation IPP program at 2,000 megawatts, which is going to involve some battery storage. All 2,000 megawatts of committed battery storage that is included within our IRP, right? I can go on and on. Eskom is currently procuring 1,400 megawatt hours of battery energy storage. The point I'm making with all of this is that right now we have one of the most exciting, arguably one of the larger battery energy storage markets that is presently available and addressable. So if you combine all of this together, the big question has to be, how do we leverage all of this to ensure that we're capturing the vast majority of that value chain? And there are various things that can be done in respect of that, but certainly one of the most effective tools we need to be thinking about is around local content, is around how do we insist in ensuring that we're maximizing local content of the solutions that we're implementing. Last point I'll make, Martin, is that, but that's just our local market. I think we need to look beyond South Africa. We need to look at a global market and say, how big is that opportunity? And can we build export-oriented and primary energy industries on the back of this? So let's take advantage of these enablers and of this need we have locally to build the industries that ultimately will play a very big role on the global marketplace. And I think that opportunity is a once-in-a-generation opportunity we dare not miss.
That was Creamer Media's Mining Weekly speaking to Fortune Mojapelo, the CEO of Bushveld Minerals.